Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein is set to testify next week in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It marks the first public hearing for Lindsey Graham's committee and the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. That was the name given for the Russia probe in 2016. Rosenstein will reportedly speak on the alleged FISA abuses. Well, the FISA abuses revealed in a DOJ memo from Inspector General Michael Horowitz. Meanwhile, Attorney General William Barr has tapped a new special prosecutor to investigate the FBI's unmasking efforts during the 2016 presidential transition period. Barr has appointed Josh Bash, the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Texas, to look into the matter. It would be part of John Durham's probe into the origin of the Russia investigation. And joining us more once again is former New York City Police Commissioner and Newsmax contributor Bernard Kerik to talk more about this. And also we're pleased to welcome in political strategist and New York Times bestselling author Roger Stone to discuss this as well. Roger is also appealing his conviction and 40-month prison sentence, which was handed down last November as part of this probe. But Roger, what do you think about, first, the naming of the special prosecutor to look at the unmasking, and what do you want to hear from Rosenstein when he testifies next week?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be back with Newsmax. And secondly, let me say I'm glad to finally hear from Rod Rosenstein because he has a lot to answer for. Among other things, we know that he signed off on at least one of these FISA warrants. Secondarily, there are numerous sources that say that he offered to wear a wire in the White House in an effort to entrap the President of the United States.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
I'd like to hear about that as well. The wheels of justice grind slowly, but we're finally getting to the point. I think Rod Rosenstein, whose unilateral appointment of Robert Mueller, started this entire probe, and we now know from the declassification of the scope memo signed by Rosenstein, there was no valid or legal reason for the Mueller investigation. It was based on a fraudulent document, the dossier.
And Roger, let me just also say it's good to have you back on our platform here because you too, like the president, have been fact-checked or censored on Twitter. You're not even on Twitter right now because Jack has clipped your wings there. But Bernie, on this situation with Rod Rosenstein, what would you like to ask him?
Well, first of all, I want to know if he's going to be read his Miranda rights when the thing starts, because at the end of the day, they're investigating the abuses in the FISA warrants. Well, he signed off on them. He signed off on at least one. He oversaw the entire investigation. The bottom line is this stuff happened under his command. The whole thing about wearing a wire to entrap the president of the United States, from the outset, you look at this and you have to believe that Rosenstein was a part of the coup against the president. I think it's atrocious. And I think it's crazy that it's taken this long. This stuff has been going on for 3 years already.
Roger, one of the things Go ahead, Bernie, sorry.
Get it over with already. There's overwhelming and compelling evidence that Rosenstein and others targeted Flynn, targeted Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, George Papadopoulos. This is insane that these people aren't held accountable already.
Yeah, it's something we've been keeping track of very closely here. Paul Manafort's situation, he's out of prison, yet Roger is set to go into prison. You look at what they were both convicted of, and it seems almost insane that Roger would still go to prison based on those facts. But let's take a look at also this situation with the unmasking, Roger. A lot of the media on the left say, oh, there was no Obamagate scandal because they were never masked in the first place. But that's missing the real problem here, is it not?
Yeah, there's no question that the entire authority of the American government and the incredible surveillance capabilities of our intelligence agencies were harnessed for political purposes. They defrauded the courts. They unmasked people illegally. This is a far, far worse scandal than Watergate. Yesterday, the president said, this makes Watergate look like small potatoes. He's absolutely right. In Watergate, a small band of private citizens committed an illegal act, unsuccessfully tried to bug the Watergate. There was never any evidence the President of the United States knew about it in advance or approved it. In this case, we now know, based on the heroic actions of Rick Grinnell, declassifying documents, that this went all the way to the top, and it was an abuse of power that amounts to sedition. This is, in fact, the biggest scandal in American history.
Well, right now there's no President Ford to make this national nightmare go away, and that may be what it takes, some sort of presidential action to actually make this go away and prevent future prosecutions, political prosecutions, because there's a never-ending cycle with this stuff. One side always trying to outdo the other. Guys, while we have you here, we got a couple minutes left. I wanted to take a look at the president's approval rating over the past 2 weeks, according to the Real Clear Politics average. Right now, his disapproval rating +11. 2 weeks ago, it was just +6. Is the president in trouble, Bernie, or does he have, we've seen the polls from 2016. Does the president have the folks right where he wants them, so to speak?
John, I hate to be the one to say this, but I think the polls are all full of garbage. I remember right up until election night in 2016, Hillary was going to win by 90% or some outrageous number, all to be fooled by the next morning. I don't believe any of the polls. I think the president has outdone himself. He has committed to everything he campaigned for and done. I think that's what the American people are going to look at.
Roger, separate and apart from all this other stuff that you're involved in, I always really enjoyed talking about poll numbers with you. Anybody who knows your political acumen knows you can read these things in ways other people can't, with different dimensions. But what do you see when you look at this polling?
Well, first of all, no serious political scientist would take a poll this far out terribly seriously. There's a great deal of volatility in the electorate. I think these poll numbers are the result of several things. One, the tsunami of fake news coverage that is rained on the president and his administration every single day. Secondarily, the growing trend towards internet censorship, where the president's supporters are being muzzled and decapitated on all of these social media platforms. That's incredibly important because the mainstream media stranglehold on our electorate and our political narrative came to an end in 2016 through the rise of a robust and vibrant alternative media based in the internet. That's where the president's supporters are. So these numbers are temporary. They're certainly not within the realm of the president's ability to bounce back. As Bernie has said, some of them are flawed. I don't take them terribly seriously. The president has much greater intensity within his base of supporters than Joe Biden has within his base of supporters. I would not be alarmed at these poll numbers at this time.
Now we're seeing a similar trend when it comes to the separation between President Trump and President Bush. He's actually closing in on Joe Biden now in those comparisons, but it is only May and then the election is not till November. Roger, Bernie, great to see you both. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to newsmaxtv.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.